It was close to midnight on a stormy November evening when Alex's car headlights cut through the sheets of rain, hammering down on the lonely stretch of highway. He had been driving for hours, the kind of drive where the road feels endless and the music on the radio becomes background noise to your own thoughts. The storm had forced most drivers off the road, but Alex was determined to reach the next town before morning. He leaned forward, squinting through the fog, when something caught his eye on the side of the road. A girl! She was standing there, soaked to the bone, her pale arms wrapped tightly around herself as the rain poured down. Her white dress clung to her like a second skin, and in the glare of the headlights, her face looked almost too pale, too expressionless. Against his better judgment, Alex slowed to a stop. He rolled down the window slightly and called out over the sound of the rain. "Do you need a ride?" She nodded silently, stepping closer. Her movements were slow, almost hesitant, as if she wasn't sure he was real. When she got in, she didn't make eye contact, just whispered an address a few miles ahead. Alex tried making small talk. "Rough night, huh? Not a lot of people out in this weather." No response. She just stared out the window, water dripping from her hair onto the seat. He assumed she was in shock, maybe stranded, maybe hurt. The drive felt longer than it should have. The storm seemed to get worse the closer they got to her destination. At one point, when lightning lit up the sky, Alex glanced in the rearview mirror, and for a moment, he could have sworn her seat was empty. His heart skipped a beat. When he blinked, she was there again, staring straight ahead. Finally, they reached the address, a small, run-down house with the lights off and the yard overgrown. Alex turned to tell her they had arrived, but the back seat was empty. The seat was still wet, rainwater pooling where she had been sitting moments ago, but there was no sign of her. No door opening, no footsteps in the mud, nothing. Alex's hands trembled as he stepped out of the car and approached the house. He knocked, unsure what he would even say. An elderly woman answered, her eyes tired but kind. "Ma'am," Alex began nervously, I gave a girl a ride here. She was wearing a white dress. She said this was her home." The woman stared at him for a long moment, her face growing pale. Finally, she said softly, "You must be mistaken. My daughter. She died on that road 15 years ago, hit by a drunk driver. She always used to hitchhike home from the diner in town." She glanced past him toward the car, her voice breaking. "You're not the first person to bring her here." The door closed gently, leaving Alex standing there in the rain, the storm raging around him, and the realization sinking in that he had just given a ride to a ghost. Emily had lived alone for almost a year in the quiet little apartment above the laundromat. It wasn't much, a second-floor unit with one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living room with 2 windows that looked out over the dimly lit parking lot. She had chosen the place for its price and convenience. What she didn't choose was the sense of isolation it carried at night. The laundromat below shut down at 9 p.m., and by then the entire block grew silent. No cars, no people, just the rustling of trees and the occasional buzz of the flickering street lamp across the lot. Still, Emily liked the quiet. After long days at the bookstore where she worked, it felt like a retreat. That night was like any other. She locked the door, made herself tea, and sat cross-legged on her bed with a book in her lap. The storm outside rattled the windows, the wind howling through the narrow alleys like something alive. And that was when she heard it. Tap, tap, tap. So faint she thought it might just be the branches outside. She ignored it, turning a page, but something about the rhythm bothered her. A few seconds passed. Tap, tap, tap. She set her book aside, heartbeat quickening. Her apartment was on the second floor. There was no balcony, no fire escape, no ledge wide enough for someone to stand on. Still, curiosity pulled her toward the sound. The curtains over the living room window swayed slightly from the wind coming through the old frame. She reached out, grabbed the edge and pulled them open, and froze. A man's face stared back at her through the glass. His skin was pale, almost gray in the moonlight. His eyes were wide and glassy, locked on hers. But it was his mouth that made her step back, breath catching in her throat. It was stretched into a grin so wide, so unnatural, it looked painful. For what felt like an eternity, neither of them moved. Emily's mind raced. How? How is he up here? The man tilted his head slightly like he was curious about her fear. Then, slowly, he raised one hand and tapped a single finger on the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Deliberate, measured, like a clock counting down. Emily stumbled back, heart hammering in her chest. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands and called 911. By the time the police arrived 10 minutes later, the man was gone. They searched the area, shining flashlights over the wet grass, the parking lot, the walls of the building. No footprints, no ladder, no signs of forced entry. Just one thing, a set of muddy handprints on the siding, leading upward from the ground, as if someone had climbed the wall with nothing but their bare hands. Emily didn't sleep that night. Every shadow outside made her flinch. Every creak of the building sounded like footsteps. She borrowed a friend's couch for a few nights, but when she returned to her apartment, the feeling never left. She kept the curtains shut tight, stopped reading by the window, stopped sitting near it at all. Then a week later, just after midnight, tap, tap, tap. Slow, deliberate. She didn't look, she didn't want to look. But something deep inside told her she was being watched. 1 month later, Emily moved out. The new tenant lasted 2 weeks before breaking the lease. They said they couldn't sleep because every night, they woke up feeling like someone was standing at the window, watching, smiling. Mark lived alone in a small apartment on the edge of town. Nights were usually quiet, just the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of cars on the highway, maybe the occasional bark of a stray dog echoing through the empty streets. It was late on a Thursday night when the call came. The ringing was loud in the stillness. It startled him out of his half-sleep on the couch. He grabbed his phone off the table, expecting maybe a coworker with a late-night tech problem. Hello? For a moment, nothing. Then a sound, faint at first like static crackling down a long, empty line. Mark. The voice was low, urgent, shaky, like the person was speaking through bad reception or fear. Who is this? Mark asked, sitting up suddenly alert. The voice ignored his question. Listen to me. Don't go near the old bridge tomorrow, not at noon, not anywhere near it. Do you understand? Mark blinked. What? Why? Who is this? The voice trembled now. You don't have much time. Please, just stay away from the bridge. And then the line went dead. Mark sat there for several seconds, phone pressed against his ear, listening to the hollow silence. No number showed up on the screen, just unknown caller. He called back. The call wouldn't go through. He tried again, same result. He didn't sleep much that night. Something about the voice, it hadn't felt like a prank. There had been fear in it, desperation, almost grief. But why call him? The next morning, the unease followed him like a shadow. He made coffee, tried to shake it off, told himself it was probably a wrong number or some idiot with nothing better to do. By noon, though, he couldn't stop thinking about it, so he drove out there. The old bridge was 10 miles from town, spanning a deep, fast-moving river. It had been built in the 1950s, all steel beams and weathered concrete. Locals complained about its condition, but no repairs ever seemed to happen. As Mark pulled up, he saw flashing lights, police cars, fire trucks, and then the bridge. The center section was gone, collapsed into the river below like it had been ripped apart by invisible hands. 2 cars and a motorcycle had gone with it. Witnesses said it happened just after noon. Just after. Mark stood frozen on the side of the road, staring at the wreckage. The wind carried the smell of smoke, gasoline, the faint wail of sirens. The call, the warning. Someone had known. That night, Mark sat at his kitchen table in silence. The clock ticked on the wall. He called the phone company, demanding records of any incoming calls to his number at 11:47 p.m. They told him there was nothing, no record of a call at that time. The next day, he went to the hospital asking about the victims. Most of them hadn't survived. One man had, barely, pulled from the river unconscious, rushed into surgery. But he died a few hours later. When the local paper ran the story 3 days later, Mark stared at the photos for a long time. One picture showed the man being carried on a stretcher, paramedics working frantically over him. The face was bruised, bloody. But even through the injuries, Mark felt like he was looking in a mirror. Same jawline, same eyes, same scar on the left eyebrow he'd gotten as a kid falling off his bike. The man looked like him. Older. 5, maybe 10 years older. The article listed his belongings: a wallet, a watch, a driver's license. The name on the license made Mark's blood run cold. It was his name, his address, and the issue date, 5 years in the future. He never got another call. But every night after that, Mark left his phone on the table before bed, just in case it rang again. If you made it this far, thank you for spending your night with us. If these stories gave you chills, there's plenty more waiting. Don't forget to subscribe to Night Fear Stories for new terrifying tales every single night. Sleep well, if you can.